Hi, I'm Asha Sarod, and I'm going to talk to you about how to foster engagement through the art of personal connection. This workshop combines knowledge I acquired from conducting interviews, my personal work experience as a manager and an employee, and from research I collected from various resources on various topics, including engagement, organizational psychology, neuroscience, and many more. So everything in this workshop is backed by research. The workshop contains three major topics. First, we discuss how to use the lens of personal identity to help managers understand themselves and their teams on a deeper level. And we do this through a series of exercises designed to get managers to open up about their own identity and share it with others in the workshop. The second section is about creating employee engagement, where we discuss how managers can use this new understanding of personal identity to increase engagement among the individuals on their own teams. And finally, we end with a section on innovation, where we'll talk to managers about how they can increase innovation by harnessing the unique skills and value that each individual brings on their team. During each segment, participants will engage in interactive exercises where they'll get to know themselves better and their coworkers better. There are 8 exercises in total, and the exercises can be used to build relationships among the participants, but it will also help the participants increase engagement on their own teams after the workshop has concluded. So let's begin by starting off with a question. Which of these options most accurately represents your workplace today? Innovative and exciting, stressful and deadline driven, transactional and bland, or fragmented and unfocused? So most research says that most people will choose B, stressful and deadline driven. And that's not surprising because statistics show that 95% of people find work stressful and only 23% find work engaging. And that's one of the reasons why I created this workshop. We all possess the keys to engagement. We have the energy, we have the motivation, we have the desire to innovate. And we've all had ideas that we believe have a valuable impact on both our teams and our organization. But when our workplace is stressful, when it's transactional or fragmented, it's really rare that these ideas get expressed or that anyone will be even willing to hear them. If you look at the actual state of employee engagement, 50% of employees are actually quiet quitting. So that means they're just kind of mailing it in, getting their paycheck, not really actively participating in the workplace. 16% of employees are loud quitting, which means they're actively disengaged and working against your teams and the organization. They're actually causing more problems in the organization because not only are they not putting an effort, but they're putting an effort in the opposite direction. And then the last piece of this is that organizations are losing $1.9 trillion of productivity because of these unengaged individuals. At the heart of poor engagement is the way we understand the people around us. So we're going to try an exercise to see what this actually looks like. We're going to test something that we do every day, your ability to read people. So I'm going to introduce you to 2 people, person 1 and person 2. And I want you to think about what can you determine about these 2 individuals just based on what you see here. And then I'm going to give you a little bit more information about each one. So keep your initial thoughts in mind. Person 1 is 35, Asian, female, and 5'3". Person 2 is 38, white, male, and 6'2". Now, we all know that we can't really draw accurate conclusions on either person just based on this limited set of information, but we all tend to come to conclusions based on limited information anyway, right? Well, why do we do that? Well, to start, the data points that I gave you, they all have one thing in common. They are all visible characteristics, things that you can see about a person that aren't really hidden from view. And in life, that's usually what we have to go off of when we meet a new customer, when we meet a new boss or a new employee, right? Now we're going to add some more details about our 2 people. And as I talk about these characteristics, once again, pay attention to how your thoughts about each individual changes. So person 1 was born in the United States. Her job title is vice president, and she has a master's degree and a doctorate. Person 2 was also born in the United States. His job title is chief financial officer, and he has a master's degree. Now, person 1 grew up in a 2-parent household, and both parents were born in another country. She had 1 older sister and 1 younger brother. Both of person two's parents were born in the US, but he grew up in a single parent household with his mother. He had one older brother and three younger sisters. Person one's father was a physician, and her mother didn't work. She lived in a four-bedroom house off a golf course and would take annual family vacations around the world. She never had to worry about money or having money for things she needed, and even had a little extra to participate in after school sports and hobbies, and her parents paid for both college and graduate school. At a young age, person two's father left his home, which made money so tight that his family often had to make choices between paying bills and paying for food. He lived in a three-bedroom, one-story home that was left mostly unfinished when his father left. As a result, he'd take showers from a water spigot in an unfinished basement, and sometimes those showers were actually cold showers. He also had to take out loans to go to undergraduate and graduate school. Person one's parents were both immigrants who were raised in poor families with emotional and physical abuse. So she and her siblings experienced emotional and physical abuse as well. Her mother also struggled with depression. As a result, she became very independent and self-reliant. Person two's father was emotionally and physically abusive towards his mother, him, as well as his siblings. Person two was also sexually abused as a child. He often managed the day-to-day responsibilities for his three younger sisters, and as a result, he also became very independent and self-reliant. Now, this is where we started. Think about how your perception changed as I continued to provide you with characteristics about each person. Did you start to feel differently about each person? Person one is a woman in a minority and the child of immigrants, but she also had the benefit of growing up wealthy and not having to pay for education. And while she had adverse childhood experiences like physical and emotional abuse, person two seemed to have many more. He experienced physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. And he had to choose between food and bills, and also had to take care of his siblings. So, all this information, it really makes you question your initial perceptions, right? And maybe makes you think who had the better life. Now, my goal is not to actually determine who had the better life. That would require knowing every experience a person had and somehow giving each experience a value. And since that's impossible, we really can't know who had a better or worse life. What I do want to point out is there are many invisible characteristics like wealth, family of origin, adverse childhood experiences, and more that significantly impact a person's life and tell us a lot about who a person is. But we often overlook them because we make assumptions just based on the first few characteristics that we see. We make these split-second assessments of people when we go to the coffee shop, when we get on a bus or a train, when we go to a wedding or birthday party, and of course, when we interact with people at work. But as we just saw, the reality is that by doing this, we ultimately miss out on so much of who a person is. And if we want engaged, innovative, and motivated teams, we need to first understand the individual. What are their needs and interests? What are their unique qualities? What value do they bring? What skills do they bring? And how do we support them both as workers and employees, but also as individuals? When managers don't take the time to understand a person's identity, they fail to see their unique qualities and their particular needs and interests. That makes the person feel less understood and less comfortable or even fearful of revealing the unique parts of who they are. And that makes them withhold their honest thoughts or feelings or beliefs with other people. And the more employees feel misunderstood, the more they withhold their true thoughts and beliefs, the less and less engaged they become over time. And because employees are disengaged and no longer volunteering their ideas, opinions, or feedback, there are fewer valuable collaborative discussions that would otherwise lead to new and innovative solutions. This disengagement also means that employees won't bother to mention problems or concerns. When problems or conflicts then don't get resolved, not only does it hit the company's bottom line, but employees also end up experiencing more stress, and then they become even less productive. So what if we could get to know people better than we do now? What would we learn? Well, in 2022, I spent time doing just that. I interviewed 30 friends, family members, and coworkers about a significant adverse experience. Why? Well, because there was so much I wanted to contribute to work. I had so many experiences, so many skills to offer, but I never got the chance because no one could really see what I was capable of. I felt like I was being viewed through this very tiny lens that didn't really reflect who I was. I saw myself as a capable attorney who started her own company, someone who learned how to be a product manager with no experience, and someone who's able to teach herself new things and apply them directly. I thought I could conquer any problem that came my way. But instead, my boss saw me as a hardworking Asian, something he actually said, and a smart woman with a lot of degrees, but not capable of doing more than what I was told. And I tried to speak up, but over time I became discouraged. I lost motivation. And as I looked around, I saw the same problem happening to other people at the company. I tried to use my position to create change, but the culture really wouldn't allow it. So I left, but then I saw the same problems pop up in my next job. I wanted to be angry, but I knew no one was actively trying to disadvantage me or anyone else. They were just going about their lives, doing what they thought was best. I also knew that I was guilty of drawing inaccurate conclusions about other people just based on their few characteristics. So I wondered if people didn't intend to judge others, but they still were, then there's something we're missing that might help explain why. And that's when I began exploring where my own judgment came from. I started by listening to other people describe their own struggles. And I had a hunch that other people had just as many struggles as I did. It's just that I couldn't see theirs and they couldn't see mine. So I started conducting interviews where I asked the person to describe an adverse experience that had a significant impact on their life. And what I discovered was life changing. First, I found that each individual's identity was much more complex and nuanced than I thought. People that I interviewed, they weren't just women or men, black or white, old or young. They had a number of different visible and invisible characteristics that interacted with each other to create a very unique experience for each person. I also learned about how each individual's unique characteristics came together to shape that person's thoughts, beliefs, and actions. And most importantly, even though I believed I knew each person fairly well, just learning about one experience fundamentally changed my understanding of who they were. I heard about everything you can think of, including sexual harassment, poverty, death, disability, abortion, anti Semitism, racism, and more. And remember, that's just what I found from interviewing 30 people about one experience. And here are a few examples of some of the things I learned. In one case, I heard about an experience of sexual harassment where the woman was young, inexperienced. She had been sexually abused in her past, and she was Indian American. She was also raised by a single mother. She was not wealthy and working her first job while trying to pay for college. And every characteristic I just mentioned impacted how she perceived the harassment, how long she chose to stay despite the harassment, and how it impacted her life going forward. Ultimately, it transformed her life and led her to starting a side gig that ultimately turned into her own marketing company. In another case, I learned about the death of a family member. And this was an individual who was a young college kid. He was in school on a baseball scholarship, and his father called in the middle of the night to tell him his younger brother died in a drunk driving accident. Now, that eventually caused him to leave school. And in the years that followed, it was kind of a blur. He overworked, he had difficulty being present in his intimate relationships, and he grappled with the role of drugs and alcohol in his own life. Now, in the end, he became a very successful attorney and consultant, but his brother's death forever changed him, his family, and even his future. And then there's my mother, someone who I've known my whole life, and she told me about her experience as a young girl in India when she missed out on going to college because she couldn't afford to go and her uncle refused to loan her the money. It was at a time when very few women went to college. And it was her intersection between her characteristics as an Indian woman in the 1960s, her financial status, and her gender that made her less likely to go to college. And that experience helped me understand why my mother placed such a high value on making sure that my sister and I were educated. And it also explained why she would sometimes shame herself for not knowing things because she didn't have the level of education that she had hoped for. Now, I'm sharing all of this because the first scenario that we covered came from real people. Person one is me, and person two is a coworker that I interviewed. It's just a testament to how much I didn't know about the people in my life and why I started this program. By all visible characteristics, my coworker looked like what many would think of as a privileged white male. But the experience he shared with me showed a very different person, someone who had a very difficult childhood, someone who overcame a lot of adversity, and someone who developed the resilience and perseverance and self reliance to overcome those obstacles. My experience conducting each of these interviews ultimately taught me that if we begin to see each person as a complex individual with an identity that's composed of many characteristics, we can learn to explore people with curiosity instead of assumptions. By exploring each person with curiosity, we can better understand and value the differences among us. And it's by valuing those differences that we create authentic and engaged individuals in the workplace. And in this workshop, we're going to cover exactly how managers can increase employee engagement by developing a deeper understanding of the uniqueness of each individual on their team.